Greetings, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Safest Family on the Block. I'm your host, Jason, and joining me today is Will Geddes. Hello, Mr. Geddes. How are you doing, sir?
Jason, it's been a long time in coming. I have been, I can only commend you for your patience and your perseverance. And I'm very, very grateful to have been invited on your show. Thank you very much. I love your page, love your content. You're doing some good stuff out there, my friend.
You are too kind. I really appreciate you taking the time to come out. I mean, I'm just this guy's got a podcast. You've got a real job. So I'm glad we're able to get it together.
I don't know about that. It depends on who you're asking, Jason.
Now, folks, we are in for a real treat today. Mr. Geddes has over 25 years experience in the specialist security sector. He's consulted with clients across the world on a wide diversity of risk and threat-related matters, personally operating and working within developed, emerging, and hostile countries across the world. He leads a team of experts, many drawn from special and elite military forces, government, law enforcement, and the sheer diversity of projects he's been involved with is ranged from extortions and blackmails to high-risk protection, counterterrorism, intelligence gathering. He's a regular speaker at international conferences, has turned up on media ranging from BBC Breakfast to CNN to Russia Today to Al Jazeera. He does a lot of writing for publications and websites across the world and is the best-selling author of Parent Alert, How to Keep Your Kids Safe Online. And although his safety and security breadth of knowledge is very wide, we're going to focus on the top content of this book because when I asked folks on my Facebook page what topic they want to know most about, online safety, mobile safety is what most parents are worried about. And I have to say, one of the things I really appreciate about this book is when you talk to people who are high-end operators in the security field, when they give advice to parents, they're often giving smart advice, but from a perspective, from a mindset that's just not appropriate for parents. That they're assuming a level of knowledge, comfort with violence that your average soccer mom and suburban dad just don't have. But you really went into this book with the mindset of your average everyday parent when you wrote it.
Absolutely, Jason. I mean, would I classify myself as a cybersecurity expert? I would readily and honestly say to you, no. However, I have bridged the divide between the propeller heads, as I like to call them, and normal people. So where you have the cybersecurity experts, of which I have many, many friends who are involved in some really complex stuff, which makes my head hurt even when they start to explain it. When they try and, as you rightly say, Jason, you've really picked up on a valid point. When they try and explain it to everyday people, their head hurts as well, and it melts, and I don't really understand. And it's expecting and anticipating they have that basic understanding of certain things, which not everybody does. So it was a difficult pitch. I mean, firstly, in so much as trying to strike that fine balance between not doing the grandmother and eggs routine, but equally not getting so complex that people just went, oh my God, I don't know what to do. And we know that most people, if they get too complex with it, they'll put it away. I mean, it's a bit like most of us men, and I will use this generally. If we buy any kind of technology, we never look at the manual. We just go straight into the technology and try and figure it out for ourselves. So whatever you got to learn, it's got to be kind of intuitive. And when the publishers came to me on the book and they said, look, Will, we want to write this book. Firstly, I was really surprised because I thought there were 1,000 books out there like this, but there wasn't actually anything that was directed to the parents. And then I said, well, okay, what age groups do you want to cover? And they said, well, between the ages of 7 and 17. And I said, you've got to be kidding, because those are two very different sets or very different sort of demographics of people and individuals and children, especially, which will have very different understandings. And I said, look, the only way that we can feasibly do that is to try and make it from the ages of 7 to 13 being about best practice. What are the things, the good rules you should try and set in place? And then from 13 to 17, it's crisis management, because the kids at the age of 13 will have surpassed their parents' understanding of what their technology can do. So really important to have something which the parent can almost not just read and refer to if they and especially this time of year, if you're setting up new technology that the kids might have got for Christmas, whether it be a new Alexa or whether it be an iPad or a phone or whatever, but also something that they could leave to one side for the child to pick up and go, yeah, I've got myself unstuck. And I've had a few cases where parents have got back to me and said, you know what, we just left it in the living room, or we left it in the kitchen or the playroom or wherever, and the child has picked it up and been able to navigate their way out of that problem or deal with that situation in a far more safe and secure way. So I've tried, you never achieve everything, Jason, but I've tried my best to try and provide something which helps not only the novice, but I've had some lovely feedback from cybersecurity experts who've said, Will, you're covering some good stuff in here. And actually, just funnily, just to add to that, I've had a few guys who've turned around to me, particularly who are from the intelligence agencies, who've gone, Will, what are you doing? And I went, what? And they said, you're helping people set up deniable devices.
Well, I remember back in the 90s, my first job out of college was as a phone monkey and then a writer for America Online. And I remember that same time was when that PGP, the pretty good privacy encryption.
Yeah,
dropped.
I remember it. Yeah.
And there was this big kerfluffle because at the time the NSA couldn't beat that. Yeah. And so, your best personal practice was foiling government agencies, which alarmed certain people. But yeah, you mentioned something I think that's really important, a big concern for a lot of parents out there, which is our teenagers speak technology as a native language, where we are struggling through it as though we took 2 years of college of that language in college and then never visited the country where it was spoken. Yeah. And overcoming that is a huge hurdle for a lot of parents. Do you have any baseline level advice about how do we navigate security on mobile devices online when our kids know it so much better?
Okay, so the first thing is, I always say, and this comes as a bit of a shock to some parents, that the device is a loan device to the child until such time as they pay for the device and pay for the running of that device. That it is a privilege that the parent is facilitating this device to the child. It's not an obligation. It is certainly going to help the kid keep safe, keep in communication. But if you're using it for that functionality, then just bear in mind that you don't have to give them a smartphone. Just give them a simple old Nokia analog phone, and then they can call you as and when they have a drama or an emergency or whatever. But there are sort of three underpinning sort of fundamentals that I think are absolutely essential. The first of which is about talking. Children are inhabiting, as we do, this whole new virtual world where we're almost going to start having friends that are in reality are practical, that we can touch, we can feel, we can speak to. And then we've got these virtual friends that we communicate with. And I know, Jason, you're getting more and more of a following on your social medias, but there will be people like I do on my social media that I'm regularly talking to. Have I physically met these people? No, not in the slightest. And your children will be doing the same. They'll be talking and communicating with these people. Now, that virtual friend is projecting an image, as we all do. None of us are going to post a photograph of ourselves with a huge hangover first thing in the morning. We're going to use every filter under the sun to make ourselves look handsome or beautiful or whatever it might be. So there's a bit of a deception in that whole virtual friend presentation. The second thing is you can't always assume they are who they say they are. Unless you've got verifiable elements. So, I've heard many a times from friends and parents who've said, my child has gone off to meet someone who they've met online and been talking to for many months or years or whatever. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't absolutely implement all safety and security measures before they actually meet. And make sure that you can't assume that that person is necessarily the right person. I'm sorry, I turn off my notifications. Always away. So the first thing is talking. You've got to talk to them. And in the same way as if your child said, look, I'm going to go off and play with Harry and Sally and Fred. And you go, well, who are they? And they go, well, they're from school. I know them from school or college. Then you'd go, great, okay. And you'd ask all the relevant questions. Where do they live? Who are their parents? That sort of thing. If they're talking to their virtual friends, treat them in the same way. Well, how do you know them? Where did you meet them? Was it on a gaming site? Was it randomly? Was it through other friends? You know, where is that connectivity? So talking is important, but I think also enabling the child to feel confident to be able to discuss it with you without you going, oh, I'm really not interested, or I don't understand it. Or even saying, look, you know, what are the latest TikTok challenges, you know, or what are the things that people are doing on social media? What are the things that frighten you online? What are the things that you're nervous about? And I think it's accepting the risk. And sadly, the vast majority of children, before they've hit the age of 13, will have seen pornography on site. And you have to also accept as a parent that you can't shield them from absolutely everything. So the only way really to navigate around that is to have those discussions, however uncomfortable they might be, with the child to calibrate their understanding. I mean, that's such a horribly sort of dark territory in terms of children's perception of relationships, of sexual relationships, all sorts of things. The second thing I would say is trust. The moment you put any spyware on your child's device without them knowing, and they discover it, you've lost them. They will disappear down a rabbit hole, and then you're into a really, really difficult spot. So if you are to put any kind of parental controls, which, to be honest, for most children are seen more as a challenge than a restriction, and how they can actually navigate around them. The second thing is the fact that you've got to trust them. Now, if they don't look at nasty content on their own devices, they'll be seeing it on their friends' devices. Their friends will be sharing it with them within messenger groups and that sort of thing. So you've got to trust your child. And I think the more trust you bestow, you know, the better that first aspect of the talking is going to work. And then very lastly, teamwork. So it's all the T's, you know, it's talking, trusting, and teamwork. And the teamwork thing is about trying to control your emotions as a parent, that you do not fly off the handle the moment they get something wrong. We're all going to make stupid mistakes. We'll send the wrong message to the wrong person. We will, I mean, a great example of that was the other day, I split up with my last girlfriend, and a girlfriend of hers sent me by mistake a message going, he looks so old, doesn't he?
Oh, no.
And bless her, she didn't realize until I replied and went, I do, because I am. The poor girl was mortified. We've all made those mistakes, and this is a grown woman. So the thing that you need to bear in mind is the talking and try and control it, that you don't, because as much as you love and want to protect your child, the temptation, if they've done something daft, that you don't end up screaming and shouting and sending them to their room and taking their device from them. Although I would guarantee the child will have more than one device that you know of anyway. So even if you take it off them, they'll probably still be operational. But that the child can come to you and collaborate. And I'll use one example quickly, Jason. So, you know, as you've noticed, I do prattle on quite a bit. So just jump across me if I keep talking too much. Was I had a very dear friend who called me up and she said, our son has gone really, really, really quiet. And one of the things I talk about in the book is looking at those changes in normal behavior patterns, which will give you an indication that maybe that's the time to sit them down and have a bit of a chat and say, look, is there something that's going wrong? And what transpired was this boy, super lovely kid, 17 years old, very, very good academically, very good sports, had a lovely girlfriend, charming, absolutely perfect, idyllic 17-year-old boy. And he fundamentally, what he'd done was he'd gone online and he'd met what he believed to be a woman or a girl, and she'd asked for an infamous D-pic. He sent it over. Turns out it was an organized crime group who then turned around and said, you're going to send us $100 by Western Union, or we're going to post it all over your Facebook, to all of your friends, to your school and everybody else. This kid was mortified. He then obviously sent the money, but like all extortionists, and I deal with, as you've mentioned in the nice lead up, I deal with blackmailers, I've dealt with kidnappers, I've dealt with all sorts. What happened was they came back and asked for more. Anyway, he didn't have any more. So he eventually went to his parents, but he hadn't been eating, he'd become withdrawn, and this poor kid was going through the worst situation. And his parents were really lovely people, and they just said, not a problem, we'll call Uncle Will, we'll work out a solution on this. And as soon as I'd had an hour with him, he calmed right down. I said, look, don't worry about it. The likelihood of those pictures getting anywhere, highly unlikely, because the vast majority of those will be just purely wide, broad scams across hundreds, if not thousands of people where they'll make the same threats. But that also pushed me to writing that section in the book, which is by some people's measure controversial. And that is about sexting. And this is about the acceptance of this new world that unfortunately we live in, that kids will do these stupid things. And actually a lot of adults do it.
I mean, let's be perfectly honest. Any parent who thinks that their kids aren't going to be experimenting with sexting is as naive as any of our parents were who thought we weren't fooling around in the back of a car.
Yeah.
It is part of teenage courtship, and we need to be prepared for that and realistic about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things which, that as much as we disapprove, as much as we hate it, as much as it terrifies us, you know, I had a good long discussion with the publisher about it. And I said, we cannot turn a blind eye to stuff that is going on. And the publisher sort of went, yeah, okay, we'll cover it. So it was about, if they're going to do it, which, let's be frank, they probably will, is how to do it safely, how to not get caught as my friend's son did, and be in that position where he is compromised and then can be extorted from, whether it be an organized crime group or whether it be an aggrieved past relationship. You know, I know a lot of young girls who, you know, they've split up with the boyfriend that they thought they were madly in love with, and this boy manipulated them to take, you know, naked photos or whatever. And then that hideous boy has sent it round, you know, the market, but also you know, around the school. The other thing as well is talking about the implications. And, you know, whereas you and I, Jason, you're probably not as old as I am, but thankfully I grew up pre-digital. So, you know, all of my shenanigans, thankfully, were not recorded on anything more than 35 cameras, you know. But for all, you know, the listeners' kids and kids these days, everything they do now could potentially come and haunt them again in the future. And it's about controlling their digital footprint and that tapestry of all those images and everything else that they're contributing. Because once it's online, it potentially is online forever.
Yeah, and I think we're, you know, globally speaking, in a really, whatever the opposite of a sweet spot is. Because I think 20 years from now, most adults, there'll be this mutually assured destruction where I'm not gonna share that D-pic I have of you in high school because I know that you're gonna show that post I made where I admitted that I like the Grateful Dead, where everybody's gonna have enough embarrassing stuff publicly online that it's just not gonna be a big deal.
What's wrong with the Grateful Dead, Jason?
Oh, don't get me started. No, but yeah, that, you know, there's gonna be so much embarrassing stuff online. I think everybody's just gonna relax and be a lot less judgmental. But right now we're in probably a 20-year period where the stuff's online and we're still judgmental. And it's problematic.
Absolutely. But I mean, you take you use that 20-year window. That's a big window.
It is.
And that will be kids applying for college. Many employers now will do digital scrapes to see if there are any embarrassing pictures on Facebook or Instagram or anywhere else for that matter, which potentially could create reputational implications to them being at their company.
It can cost you jobs. It can cost you college admission and scholarships. And in the immediate point, like that nephew of yours was experiencing, that just the social pressure, the social embarrassment, it's real and scary. And one of the things I really appreciated that you brought up was the things you described to protect our kids from the online experience were almost exactly what our parents did with us, if we were lucky, about sex, about driving, about general teenage shenanigans, about you talk to them, you get them to trust you, you help them out as much as you can, you try not to freak out when they've scared you. And it's exactly how we were treated. And I think that's one of the most important things parents can take away about online safety, mobile safety, that although the technology is new, the parenting is the same.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Although if it was my dad, he clipped me across the ear regularly if I did anything wrong.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's about measuring it, and I mean, it's about setting those boundaries as well. So like for example, one of the things I talk about in the book is when kids look at sort of pornographic material or adult material, and you can't stop them necessarily looking at it, but what you can do is you can stop them storing it. So one of the things that I talk about is not to prevent them downloading it, because if they download it and they store it, that then creates all sorts of potential problems, let alone the fact that there could be some malicious code in there or virus attached to it, which could crash their system or ransomware them. But it also removes those kind of habits. And it's an agreement that the child has with the parent that the parent may periodically say, I'm going to look at your browser history. And if you erase your browser history, and there are ways around private browsing as well, so you can see that browsing history, then you're saying to the child, look, you need to go and investigate, you need to go and explore, be adventurous, whatever, but with limitations. And it's again down to that trust. And it's the fact that the child realizes you will not fly off the handle if they've looked at something online which might worry you. And again, it's about saying, look, we can discuss this stuff, or I won't embarrass you and we won't discuss it, but I understand you're being exploratory, but just be cautious, and I want to keep you within certain parameters so I can protect you.
No. And that's excellent advice. And again, getting back to making sure that relationship is there where they trust us not to freak out. Yep. Which I think is one of the big things. Now, on the topic of freaking out, I noticed in most safety topics when I'm talking to parents, there's two big things that worry folks, or should worry folks. There's the one where everybody's worried about it, but it doesn't happen that much. And then there's the one that really happens a lot that we're not sufficiently prepared for.
Yeah.
So what, in your experience, what are those for parents with online and mobile safety?
Okay,
let's start with the one that everybody's worried about that doesn't happen.
Okay. Oof, wow. Let me have a think about that. So in terms of the most common one is necessarily children meeting people offline that are total strangers. Yes, the statistics look pretty horrible. And I mean, it's something like 8 out of 10 children will have had communications with a stranger online. But that's really broad. I mean, it could be a child, it could be a pedophile, it could be a variety of people. So again, it draws back to the point that you were making, which was about you've got to accept that there are risks, but it's about communicating and saying, okay, there are certain information you should never give out to somebody online that you don't know, that you physically don't know. So do not give out your school address. Do not give out your personal telephone number. Do not give out your home address. Be very cautious about giving out identifiers which someone could potentially utilize. So I would say in terms of children meeting someone offline that is a potential risk, it's a lot less than necessarily is publicized, because a lot of the information and a lot of statistics I've noted have been somewhat manipulated to be far more scary and far more sort of fear-mongering than necessarily the reality is. But that's not to say that their kids will not, won't necessarily meet people offline.
It sounds a lot like when we were growing up, the stranger abduction, the kid in the candy van, that was all over the news that all the parents were scared of, but it's the actual occurrences of that was almost a rounding error as compared to victimization by people your kids and you already knew.
Yes,
sounds like exactly. It's very similar.
No, you're absolutely right, Jason. I mean, and it's again like rape. I mean, the vast majority of rapes are perpetrated by someone that the victim knows. Stranger rape or a stranger danger for children, it's far less. The abuse is more likely going to happen by someone who's a friend of the family, or someone who works with the family, or is associated in some shape or form, or lives in the neighborhood that the parents know. So you're absolutely right. Thank you for raising that. That's a really, really good point. In terms of something that people don't necessarily consider as a big risk, but is a big risk, is, and I can take it at one end, and that is password functionality and also differentiation. Now, there's a great website, which I'm sure you've seen, which is Have I Been Pawned, which is porn spelled PWNED, not the other one. And it's a good website to go to periodically because it will tell you if your email address, you can put your email address in, it will tell you if it's actually been hacked. But Apple have now become very good and they send you notifications if your email address has been also been compromised. Sorry, your password's been compromised. So one of the things that I would always say is make sure those passwords are different for every single, or use something like 1Password or one of those similar apps to control, or Authy or Google Authenticator. And it's one of the ways that if you keep using the same password, every single account that you've used that password on is going to be compromised if it's compromised in one place. And more often than not, the compromises generally will come through some app that you've had on your device rather than anything else. It will be some app that the developers shut down because it wasn't successful. They haven't controlled that data, and that information gets out into the public domain and then could be brokered on the dark web to those that are interested. But the likelihood of someone following it up, unless your name is, Jennifer Garner or it's Brad Pitt or something, it's going to be fairly small. But that two-factor authentication thing, I mean, would you remember the celebrities that had all their Rudy pictures that were...
Yeah. What did they call that? The fappening?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, the fappening. Brilliant. I love it. I love these guys who come up with these things. But yeah, I mean, a lot of those guys were fundamentally compromised by phishing. And again, you've got to drill down on these things. So all these all these articles that are out there saying that people they'd had their accounts hacked. Nah, not really. They'd been sent phishing, emails that they clicked on the link thinking it was Bank of America or whoever it is or whatever, Starbucks, and click on this link to potentially sort of get a free discount for your next coffee. That's how they got compromised. But the problem was that they had not got any kind of two-factor authentication on their device. That is absolute mainstay. Anybody who hasn't got 2FA or multi-factor authentication activated on their accounts is asking for trouble.
So for anybody who's not familiar with the term, the two-factor authentication is when you log into your bank and it sends a code to your phone via text, and then you have to put it in before you can go move your money around. That's two-factor authentication, and it's a pain in the tuchus, but it is much more secure than just relying on passwords alone.
As you well know, Jason, anything to do with security, the more secure it is, the more inconvenient it is.
Yeah. And you mentioned about the free coupon or whatnot. It reminds me a lot of that. What was the name of the hacker from the 80s who was, the first guy arrested by the FBI on a bunch of counts? Yeah. And he was saying that almost all of his hacks were calling somebody on the phone about, hey, this is Jake from IT. I need your password.
Yeah.
Right.
I know. That's social engineering. I talk about, social engineering. So, I mean, it's something that I've trained investigations teams. And Kevin Mitnick's book, because he was, as you rightly say, he was the first person out the gate, The Art of Intrusion. It's a great book. It's a great read. Tells some fabulous stories. The second book, I'm not such a huge fan of, but the first one's definitely, you can probably get it pretty damn cheap on Amazon or certainly on Kindle. But it's a good book. And it gives you an idea of how smart some of those social engineers are. But inevitably, if you want to move into that whole world, we could do a whole episode on that. It's a huge subject.
Yeah. And that's a thing that we can train our kids on. Now, there's a concept that I encountered, and it might have been in your book, the bus stop principle. Was that you?
No, that wasn't me, but it sounds good. I want to hear it.
Yeah, it's just a very simple way to teach our kids, especially as they're becoming teens and tweens, about online conversations. That you think about, you're waiting by the bus, you're waiting by the train, and the person sitting next to you strikes up a conversation. Tell anybody you meet online about that much about yourself.
Yeah.
Or you're talking to them, you'll tell them maybe your first name, but you won't tell them your last name. You'll tell them that you're into Dungeons and Dragons, but you're not going to tell them about the convention you're going to next week. You'll tell them you live in Salem, but you're not going to tell them the neighborhood. And it's a guide that a lot of kids kind of intuitively understand about how much information is safe to tell somebody.
I love that. That's great. I'm going to steal it and claim it as my own, Jason.
Excellent. You heard it here first. Yeah.
No, it's great. I mean, I think that's a really lovely way of putting it. I mean, again, in the book, one of the things which, you know, I thought was hopefully quite helpful was about looking at a graph, and we worked with a child psychologist on it, where we looked at the ages of when a child should be given access to certain technology or certain social platforms. Now, you can never have a rule of thumb necessarily, and you can't necessarily stop the child doing it in the background, but at least it gives you some kind of measuring tool as to, you know, should I dump all this technology on them because they're screaming at me because all their friends do, or can I feel, you know, suitably reassured that actually only at particular times should I move from this device to this device or whatever it is. But yeah, in terms of children, it's a tough job for parents. But where I see more problems happening is where parents have let their hands off the wheel and they've just gone, off you go, Timmy or Jemima or whatever, and crack on. And that's where it happens. It is literally giving the child the keys to the ignition and going, pop down the shops and get me a pint of milk.
Yeah.
Or a quart of milk, in your say.
Yeah, that's actually, I'm about to release a course where I walk parents through writing a device contract with their kids. And one of the points I make is I draw the comparison between your kid's phone and our car. Yeah. So that driver's license, it represents freedom, it represents adulthood, it represents a big rite of passage, it represents access, more privacy, all of these things. But it also represented some dangers. And I think all of us viscerally understand how dropping a kid in a car, giving him the keys, saying knock off down to the store without a year of driver's training, without watching you drive safely while they were growing up is insane.
Yeah.
But a lot of us do that with our kids and their devices.
Yeah. I mean, you could even add in aspects of what are they going to contribute towards the insurance of the vehicle? Yeah. So if there is, there is a certain payment that they have to make to contribute to the insurance, because they may have the driver knowledge, they may have the keys to the vehicle, they may know the destination they're heading, but unless they pay for insurance, if they have a crash on the way,
give them a little skin in the game.
Yeah.
Although you made a point earlier here in this conversation, and also in the book, about the leverage that we can have by the phone being our phone that we pay for, that we are loaning to them. It gives us a little bit of moral authority behind governing their use.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that's really important. It's amazing how many parents I've spoken to, Jason, who've turned around and gone, yeah, but it's their phone. And I'm going, are they paying for it? Did they buy, did they spend $1,200 on the brand new iPhone 13 or whatever it is? No, they didn't. It was a gift. And you're paying for the contract. So it's your phone. If the FBI turned up because they're looking at terrorism material, you're the one who's probably going to get carted off.
Exactly. And it gives that little bit where they can then, if they are paying for the phone, they can come back. You can't tell me what to do on my phone. And so it does give us that leverage that I think most people viscerally understand.
And by which time, by the time they can afford the phone, you're going to be beyond being able to control them anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And it gets back to what you're talking about, is that by that point, hopefully we have forged the relationship and proven that we trust them, that they can trust us when they did dumb stuff in the past.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we're all going to do dumb stuff.
Oh, I do on a daily basis, Jason, let me tell you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we never grow out of that.
No.
So a point you bring up in the book that I think a lot of parents need to hear and really internalize is about video and photo material and accidentally giving away information. I'd like viewers real quick to take a look at my background, take a look at Will's background. Both of our backgrounds could be in any city, anywhere. I wouldn't be surprised if the angle of that mirror behind Will had been checked to make sure it wasn't showing any personal information. All you can tell from behind here, if you really look, that's Neil Armstrong's foot. So maybe I'm a 40-year-old man who's kind of into space. That's really going to help you narrow shit down. But could you hold forth on that? There's a really good point in the book that includes some helpful illustrations and diagrams.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I talk about is the identifiers. And like you rightly said, so even though you can see a little, it's dark outside over here right now, early afternoon, and it's dark already, being winter. But being very careful about what identifiers you put there. And the reason being is that if your child is in video conference with someone and they have posters behind them of Adriana Grande or Adele or I don't know what the name of the young bands are these days. It could be Backstreet Boys, whatever. But if they have those, maybe they have their school uniform, maybe they have a school insignia, they have a poster, they have things which are personalized to them. They could even have the photo out of the window at the back. There could be a church steeple, or there could be a board, a signage board. Anything which potentially could help identify and locate where that individual is. So what you don't want is anything. You've got a very nice blank background there, Jason. It's and although I've got a bit of stuff in the background there's nothing a great deal other than a first edition Man with the Golden Gun that I've got on the wall up there. I've got a couple of other things around here which aren't in shot, but a few mementos from my adventures in places like Iraq and Afghanistan.
And let's be clear, given what you do for a living and how public you are about it, anybody who wouldn't have guessed that you were a James Bond fan probably isn't somebody we have to worry about.
Although I have to say, I kind of after I think okay. Here's a question, Jason. Who's your best Bond?
Ooh, you gotta depend. Like, my favorite Bond movies are coming from Craig. My favorite James Bond is Roger Moore. He's just kind of that smooth guy, but had a little more menace than the Scottish dude. But the movies, just because movie making had gotten so much better, the Daniel Craig movies had the pacing, had the attitude, just had better people working on the project, even though Daniel Craig never really felt like James Bond to me.
No, I'm the same.
Felt like an action movie, a martial arts movie that happened to take place in the James Bond universe. No, I'm kind of with you on that. Although I think Roger Moore had some cracking films. Live and Let Die is definitely one of my favorites. That's for sure. But I mean, in terms of background, really key. The child is not giving out information that could compromise them. But also, coming back to your point you mentioned earlier about Kevin Mitnick and the social engineering, if you have some indicators behind you, there is a way that the person that you're speaking to on the phone could drop in, because you will be seeing what you have on your walls regularly without necessarily noticing it anymore. It's been up there for some time. So you've forgotten that you've got that picture of Adriana Grande or Ariana Grande behind you. And what could happen is I could be talking to you, and let's say you've got the Neil Armstrong thing. And I could turn around and say, you know what? I saw this great documentary the other day, Jason, about, the conspiracy of the moon landings and that sort of thing. And I know with that picture behind you that you are into space. Or there's a good chance you're going to be into it. And I will set that lead. It's a little bit like the crystal ball psychic, It will start leading you with certain questions to engineer you to answer them, to then seem as though they know you really well. And any of the viewers of this podcast who've studied NLP or even looked into neurolinguistic practice will know that there are things like voice matching and creating a commonality to manipulate that individual. And a smart person who is a predator, and predators aren't always old, middle-aged guys. Predators can be quite young. They could be in their late teens. They could be in their early 20s. So within that safe bracket, that it's not your kid that's gone online, immediately sees some old geezer like you or I and goes, freak, closes off, obviously, the connection. It could be someone much younger, but does that mean that they're any less of a predator than the older guy? Not in the slightest. So you've got to be careful you're not giving fuel to the predator or the stranger online to start creating that commonality between them and your child by being able to utilize what they can see in the background. Absolutely. It's very much like there was a theme there online for a while from a lot of security people about looking at the stickers on the back of your car, where if you had the proud parent of my honor student at Jackson Elementary, hey, now we know where your kid goes to school. Or in America, one of them is proud. There's actually stickers that say something like proud wife of a deployed soldier.
Yeah.
So your husband's not home for months.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very much like that in the
the
cyber realm.
It's like the number of people who post online, and we've had a spate of them here in the UK, where celebrities will post their holiday photographs. And then, surprise, surprise, they come back and find their house being burglarized. Kim Kardashian in Paris flashing her fantastic jewelry, and surprise, surprise, she gets robbed. It's about using social media sensibly, and there's plenty of tools out there to pixelate the background, to conceal certain things. I mean, on my Instagram, I took brave action of putting my car up because I was kind of proud of it. But obviously, I didn't show the license plate on it. I concealed that. I have to take, because of the nature of what I do, Jason, I take probably a great deal more steps than many others in terms of obviously concealing where I live, what my pattern of life is, that sort of thing. That if there are a few people out there, and there are, that might want to come and pay me a visit, I'm going to make it a little less easy for them to do it.
Now, you mentioned online tools, and I thought I'd be remiss if I didn't mention to everybody your tool, Tactics On, which is, and so could you tell folks a little bit about what it is, how it happened, and how folks can get connected with it? Okay,
so Tactics On is a app, it's a personal safety app. And there's quite a lot out there in that space. But it was an app that I created actually more for my own team. So I have teams working operationally around the world who are providing protection or running surveillance operations. And I wanted an ability to be able to see where they were at any given time, and for them to be able to have a live line communication outside of cell phones and SMS, to be able to message or WhatsApp for that matter, which was entirely secure. And I then had a lot of people, I used to deliver a lot of personal safety, a lot of personal protection training courses. And I get people asking me questions. What shall I do in this situation? I'm being followed home. I'm going out on a date. I'm traveling on public transport. What are the things that I need to think about? And so I developed Tactics On Pro. There is a free version, which is Tactics On Lite, which you can actually purchase, and you can find them all in the App Store or on Google Play. And then there's a lot of content in the middle. If you press the center button, there's a lot of personal security advice for a variety of different situations. It's been very well received. It's been in the market 7 years. I haven't pushed it very heavily, to be honest. We're quite happy because we have Tactics On Assist, which security companies run similarly for their own teams. Government agencies have, a couple of big name investment banks and corporations around the world run. So, but thank you for mentioning it, Jason. Appreciate it. Thank you.
And did I reread on your site that there's the free version, which doesn't have a lot of functionality, has mostly the knowledge. Then there's the pro version, which has things like location tracking, immediate contact with emergency services, and all of those things. And the price for that is a whopping 2.99 pounds. What is that? £2.99.
Yeah, £2.99 for life.
Flat fee for life, not per month.
No, flat fee. We don't believe in these subscription models. I think it's really insidious. So that's a flat fee for life, and will survive on all your versions of your devices moving forward. So the joy of it is if you've got the same Apple ID account running on your iPad as you do on your phone, then you can actually put it on both and not pay whatever $2.99 times 2 is. I was never good at maths, Jason.
Yeah. So it probably works out to like $5.
Yeah, probably about $5. So cup of a price of a cup of Starbucks or whatever. Yeah.
So if you have a family of 5, it's 2 tickets to the movies for lifetime on this. So, and it's a tool that you designed to help professional security teams stay safe in the field.
Yeah, and I had a lot of celebrities who were on it as well, who I didn't know were on it. They'd called me up and said, "Oh, I've seen this really good app," and I went, "Great, it's mine." It was even nicer.
Fantastic.
So thank you, Jason. I appreciate the plug. Thank you.
No, thank you for it. I mean, and at the price, it's not even a plug. It's just hey, here's a really cool, very inexpensive thing that you should get that, and you should make sure that you have the right chains for your car, and do you have enough flashlights? You know, it's just all these,
Yeah,
all these
absolutely.
little
I mean, we're also really, really, really focused, because there's a cyber division to my company, obviously, that we're very, very cautious about privacy. And if people go on the website, tacticson.com, there's a couple of videos that talk about how it's secured. So you will not be giving out any data to anybody without your prior permission being given first. So the one thing which I really wanted to make sure is people feel secure. So any of the parents who are thinking, great, I can stick it on my kid's phone and then know where they are at any given moment, that won't work, because the kid has to trigger it. However, this is again going back to my 3 T's, which is about the trust, the teamwork, and the talking. So it's about getting the child, obviously, to go, look, we're trusting you. We're giving you the tool to keep you safe, but it's down to you. The ownership is down on you to notify us and let us know if you need, and it will give your precise position on a map, and it's got a tracker. It's got all sorts of things, but again, controlled by the user.
Yeah. And again, that can be part of the agreement you make with your kid about, at first, you need to have that location tracking on all the time. And then as they demonstrate that they're showing good sense, you can back that down a little bit about, you know, I need to know your location if you're going to go see somebody who hasn't been to the house.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. If you're going to go on a date with someone you've met online, put the tracker on. I talk about dating on Tactics On. There's a section specifically on it. But even if they go, I'm going over to Jimmy's house, you can say, go to Jimmy's house, but you better send me a check-in when you get there. So it proves that you are actually at Jimmy's house. You're not disappeared off somewhere else. So it's, again, this trust thing.
Yeah. And cell phones, a lot of parents are afraid of cell phones. I think less every year as people who grew up with cell phones become parenting age. Yeah. But they can be such an amazing tool for parents. When my oldest became a teenager, and now that he's in his 20s even, I love texting because I can just kind of check in with him every day, you know, send him a funny meme or just, you know, ask just, hey, how you doing, buddy? In ways that we couldn't as parents, because honestly, everybody's busy. Our kids don't want to have that much to do with us. They're not going to sit and talk to us on the phone for half an hour, but you can build that relationship that creates the 3 T's just by, hey, how's math class?
Well, the one thing I do also advise, and I try and get parents to get their children to get into is leaving voice messages and voice notes. Now, when you're actually tapping out a message, you can read it, you can write it with one voice and you can read it with another voice. The thing with voice notes is it actually will tell you exactly how they're feeling. So it provides that disconnect. And God, we're all the same. There are some friends of ours that we know if we call them up, we'll never go off the phone for about an hour when we really only want to communicate about 2 things. So the thing about voice notes and battering, you know, playing voice note tennis and whizzing them back and forth is a nice way of being able to barometer your child's current mood as well. So if they're a bit upset or distressed or angry or upset about something, it's a nice way of basically getting them to communicate back with a voice note. You can detect, if it's your own kid, you can detect pretty quickly what their mood is.
And anybody who's been in an argument on social media over something that turned out you agreed the whole time knows exactly why that voice tone is important. So yeah, that's what I'm adding that to my repertoire. That's very good idea.
My pleasure.
So Will, thank you so much for coming on today. But before I let you go,
yes, sir.
What is the thing that you don't get enough chances to talk about?
Wow. Well, as you know, I can prattle on quite a bit anyway, Jason. So, you know, never shy in coming forward. To be honest, I think it's about, let me think. It's a tricky question because there are, you know, I think everybody has their own particular needs and wants. I'm really kind of pleased because the book's been out for a little while now that the price has really come down. I mean, the Kindle version is like less than buying my app, to be frank. So I don't see any harm in necessarily getting it, even if you go through it. You know, the way. I mean, it's like me. I go to a lot of training sessions. Don't know about you, Jason. You know, if there's a particularly good instructor who said, you know, come along and I'm talking about whatever. If I can walk away with 1 or 2 really good new techniques, it was money well spent and it was time well spent. And I would always say, you know, always be learning. You know, I've been in the industry 30 years now. and I'm still learning, Jason, and if I do interviews for CNN or ABC or Good Morning America or whoever, the last thing I ask them to do is to call me security expert. It's security specialist, because I'm sure as hell not an expert. I will always strive to be, but I would never be arrogant enough to say that I am one as yet, because I'm always learning.
Yeah, kind of like we talked before the show started recording about how you and I are both martial arts junkies. And when people try to saddle you with that title master, like, oh,
painful. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
I've really enjoyed this, Jason. Thank you so much.
Great chat.
Really honored to be on your show, sir. Thank you.
Oh, you're too kind. Folks, find him at willgeddes.com. Do get the book. It's I found it by accident when I was putting together a prize package for a giveaway last year, but was just, oh man, it is one of the few books out there that really deals with online security for families from the mindset of a parent. It's excellent work. Again, check him out and check out Tactics On. I just found out about it myself, but it's definitely going to be replacing Life 360 for me, which I think you folks have seen in the news about them. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Will. We'll see everyone next time.